Welcome to Ageless, an interview show. As we travel through life, each of us has a story to tell. So therefore, we have an ageless legacy. Our show will focus and reflect on the stories from men and women who have reached the mature age of 50 plus in life and wish to share their journey from then till now.
Hi everyone, welcome to Ageless, the program dedicated to the idea that when it comes to aging, attitude counts more than the number of candles on your cake. My name is Pearl Boyle and I'm your host. Today my guest is Sophie Barnes. She is an 80-year-old flower essence consultant, among other things, and she is very vibrant, and we're going to talk about all the things that you are doing as you age. So Sophie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, thank you.
Great. Our last program, we had somebody on, a geriatric care manager, that talked about 3 basic principles for aging successfully. She said we need to keep working, we need to keep moving, and we need to keep connected. What do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
Sounds perfect to me. Covers the bases.
So we're going to talk about the things that you're doing in those 3 areas, as well as all of your different passions, of which flower essences are only one. So when it comes to working, let's define that term. What's a flower essence consultant?
Well, that is somebody, we're all different, I'm thinking, but in 1985 I just saw these little bottles of sort of a homeopathic looking little bottle on the shelf of a very avant-garde health food store in Westport called Leonard's Echo Farm, and I said to the owner, what are those? I was just attracted to them, and tiny little
vials.
He said, oh, they're absolutely miraculous, but you have to know how to use them, because if you don't pick the right one, and there are 38, he said, well, none of them can hurt anybody because they just don't work if they don't vibrate to your frequency of your emotion that's out of balance. And that was just fascinating to me.
So we're talking about using them to promote health.
Emotional health.
Emotional health, not physical health.
No. Spiritual should have a place in there, though.
Okay. So we've got a clematis here that you brought today. Very beautiful. It is clematis, isn't it? Or am I wrong about that?
We think so.
We think so.
My neighbor said, why don't you take this along? And we think it's from his clematis. No, I shouldn't appear not to know one clematis. Well, the flower essence clematis was collected in England from wild sources. So in America we have kinds of clematises, if that's how you say it, that may not be the Bach Flower discovery.
Because you're also a Bach Flower, what would be the consultant? Okay.
Intuitive also, because I've been doing this for 27 years. And over the years of using the flower essences, which really do enhance your awareness of the connection between the personality and the soul underneath, I guess. And so anyway.
So you do this to help other people?
Yes, to pick the right one, although Dr. Bach, who was a genius medical doctor before his time, ahead of his time,
right.
He designed this system, since the essences themselves are only made from like dewdrops, so they're totally harmless. They have no particulate matter in them, and that's why they were passed through the FDA as a safe over-the-counter.
So you say that you need to.
So I help people choose which one might be the mood or the emotion that they might be tipping to the negative of, and they need to go to the other end of the continuum. Like, for instance,
you've been doing this since you were 60, essentially. If you've been doing it about 20 years.
Yes, right.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So over the years, I'm just saying that you get an intuitive faculty with
working with
reading
them.
people, because that's how Dr. Bach figured out how they worked in the first place. He just said, this flower has that virtue, and you seem to have that little imbalance, so let's put the 2 of you together.
Right.
And over the years,
so you really have to be sensitive. to people and their emotions, and then you have to know also, for instance, clematis, you might even have that. Did you have a chance to look that up?
Yes.
So for instance, clematis, what
So you
does
can
it
give a
say?
person this book and they can do this all themselves. But if they want a little fine tuning and think, well, I don't think it's quite that one, and they just don't know their own state very well because they're in the middle of their own
Right, sometimes
situation.
it's hard when you're right in the middle
So I'll
of
read
something.
the Bach Flower essence of the indications for this one.
Okay.
So clematis for those who are dreamy, drowsy, not fully awake, no great interest in life, quiet people, not really happy in their present circumstances, living more in the future than in the present, living in hopes of happier times when their ideals may come true. In illness, some make little or no effort to get well, and in certain cases may even look forward to death in the hope of better times or maybe meeting again some beloved whom they have lost.
So it's something that would just in essence help energize, provide hope, etc.
On a certain, now that they've done all the brain research, there are pathways, neuronal pathways that tie into certain emotions, and they've been able to track them in the amygdala, which is the emotional center.
Right, exactly,
So
in the
this
brain.
was, the science of this was pretty undiscovered when Dr. Bach did this during the 20s and 30s, but now it's becoming rational science as well as, what else? Herbal mysticism. No.
What I like about it, though, is I like that you're so passionate about it because, again, one of the things that this geriatric care manager, Joan, was saying last time, and I think that everybody that's been on this program, and you certainly fit into this category, demonstrates, and that is that when you're passionate about something, it's protective in terms of healthy aging. And you're not just passionate about flowers. When I say protective, you rolled your eyes there, but when I say protective, I mean that it can help you to age healthfully.
Well,
Would you
I
agree
kind
with
of
that?
come in a passionate hue anyway, having fire signs and being a Leo.
It's not just wearing blue, you
So
come in a
it's-
passionate hue.
I'm enthusiastic, and my main remedy is for over enthusiasm. So if anything, I need to balance the passion.
Now, I love that you're passionate about other things. You're passionate about environmental issues. You're an activist. Let's talk about that a little bit.
All right. Well, so one form of balancing healthy living touches all the others.
Okay.
So with 5 doctors in the family,
You have 5 doctors in your family.
yes,
A father, mother.
father, brother, his son, a niece, and a cousin.
I'm glad there's a niece too, a woman.
Oh yeah, the
Okay.
two women, the cousin and the niece are women.
Both women, yes.
Anyway, before my dad died, I had medicine. He was a surgeon. And I said, what do you think of that, Dad? Because in those days it was considered a little dodgy. So he said, I'm all for it. He said, I'm getting out just in time. And he died a week later because he felt that the medical establishment was not serving people with all the natural remedies and things that were available. And he used to send his patients to get drugstore glasses. He was an ophthalmologist. And he, for a sty, he would tell them to heat up a silver spoon and put it on their eye.
So you come by this honestly.
Yes.
Yes.
He was a Virginia expatriate and doctor, so he was a bedside doctor person that really wanted to see relief of suffering. So I think that's my passion, is really to relieve suffering and not to leave any stone unturned. Because my mother used to say, uh-oh, I'm blanking out. Okay.
I understand that. I blank out all the time.
No, this
Living
is
on
important, so maybe, all right.
I'll ask you a question
Can
and
I-
then maybe that will
okay.
come back.
Oh, I got it.
You did, well then you better say it.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Every problem has its built-in solution.
Ah.
My passion is to get to the problem in its real cause state. So
To really understand the root
the
of a
root cause
problem.
of the problem. And my father said that, well, you always did want to get to the bottom of things. So that's why this is not anything I can recommend. Maybe it just comes
Right.
with people, you know.
And as I said, you come by it honestly.
Okay.
I'm interested in what some of the medical people in your family, we talked about your father before he died, so that's very clear. and it sounds like he was very supportive. But I'm wondering what your niece and your cousin and different, how did they feel about your passion, about what you're into with this?
Well, do I have to admit here that I'm the black sheep of the family, sort of per se?
I don't think you should just admit it. I think you should embrace it.
Okay,
because one of
only
the
in
things,
recent years.
Because one of the things, one of
We're
the
talking
points,
successful in the. Oh, sorry. I
No. This is fine. You keep going. I told you we would be interrupting each other.
Oh,
It's
you
okay.
did say it was okay to talk
did
over
say it's
you.
okay.
No, I don't think. All right. So anyway, I've forgotten. So go ahead.
One of the things I've noticed as people age is that it's healthy and it's not uncommon to stop caring so much what other people think. So in other words, if you are at 80 years old becoming or have been the black sheep of your family, bravo, because they're not living your life, you're living your life.
That sounds so harsh, but I want to correct that. It's not that they hated me. It's,
I wasn't thinking that.
Or anything. It was just that I didn't travel a success story path, like becoming a professional anything, because I got married very young.
Yes.
No, so anyway, thank you for bringing that out.
So you got married young, and you raised children, yes?
4 daughters.
4 daughters. Yes. How old are your daughters now, may I ask?
One's your age, but I won't say what that is.
I'm 58, so one is
that's
58.
What she is.
If I'm having you say
we
your age, I
confess
should
that,
say mine.
you know, outside. And then I have twins who are 54.
Yeah.
And the youngest is 48.
How many boys, how many girls?
They're all girls.
They're all girls.
Yes.
Yes, and so what do you think about gender issues in terms of today? Your daughters that are coming up, they're following you. Do you think it's easier to be a woman these days? What do you think?
Boy, that's sort of the heart of the matter of so many issues. I think this is one of those underlying things I'm always digging down to.
Yes.
Because a lot of what I'm feeling passionate about is basic equality, fairness, no abuse of power. So I've done a lot of reading of history and to see how far back patriarchal cultures have gone. And then I found out there's this woman's village in northern China where they don't get married to the men. The woman shuts the door of her tent if if she's like wanting to move on.
So she has a choice.
She has a choice. They aren't intertwined economically. So anyway, I do think we need to tend toward more equality, especially from the standpoint that I do feel there are interlocking attributes of men and women rather than swinging everybody to one side or the other of the gender
we each
strengths.
have our own. Well, I think the same is true with aging, that rather than denying our age, this is my opinion, that to embrace it, that each stage of life has something to recommend it. Not to say that if you lose your health, for instance, that can't be difficult. You have to walk a mile, as Chaucer says, in somebody's shoes before you judge them. Let's move on a little bit, because we're talking about the 3 elements. We're talking about keeping working, keeping moving, keeping connected to people. What do you do, if anything, to exercise? Do you exercise? Do you move?
My weak point. No,
You have some health issues.
Yes, for 10 years I've had Lyme disease with no remission, and that affects your joints. And then I also have other sort of, what do you call it, degenerative spine conditions kind of alongside that came from injuries from long ago. So I have had issues with what is comfortable or not to push. So I don't push into too far of discomfort, but I don't allow myself to be a couch potato either. So, you know, it's a bit of a...
Yeah, I admire that. I mean, when you walked in here today, when you walked into the studio...
I was looking for a chair.
You were looking for a chair.
I always want to sit down.
And I realized that you could use a little bit of assistance, but I admire that that didn't stop you from coming. And it was very clear to me just exactly what you said, that you look at your limits and you don't push it too far, but that doesn't mean you hold back either.
Yeah, well, I know how it can hurt your health to be still. So
right, to be sedentary.
You mustn't do that.
Yes. Okay, good. What about keeping connected? I think of your activism in a way as one way that you're connecting with others, as well as, let's just say, healing the earth. You know, trying to
connection
do your
is
part.
the big, for me, that's the big one, you know.
We'll talk about that a little
Well,
bit.
because I've studied philosophy a lot, and I took a course very recently it was called, well, in eco-psychology, if that makes any sense, but there's a better title, which is Reconnecting with Nature.
Okay.
So
And
there's
this has to do also with flower essences,
yes,
by the
it's
way.
the whole.
I'm sure you realize the interconnection.
And you know, now certain people that have had near-death experiences or death experiences but been rescued, they come back and say, we are all connected on a molecular level. So I guess I'm finally, what I'd like to convey to people is how non-discrete we are as a separate organism. Now, I mean that word, in other words, we're not walled off. And the more you can extrapolate from everything you do, whether it's good for everybody or not, the better off you are, the happier you are, the more meaning you find in what you're doing, and the more people you can connect with. So,
Right, so you might add a dimension to that idea of connection.
yes. So
Yes.
everything now that I do, and by the way, before we get off the air, I just want to say how grateful I am that I have had this many years. I mean, for me, it only gets to be more experience, more time to learn, more reading, more connecting, more people. To me, aging is more, you know.
And I am hearing you say in more than one instance, just since we've started this interview a few minutes ago, that you're learning this and you're learning that.
Definitely,
And,
yeah.
you know, that's very exciting. It's exciting, I think, for people like me to hear people like you talking about continuing to learn.
The more you rest on settled convictions, the more you suffer, in my book.
Can you elaborate
Everything is
that
about
on a
change.
little bit?
Everything is about change.
Have you had that experience of resting on a settled conviction in your life and
Well,
going beyond
people
that?
around me, I find that if they do, they're stymied or they become, speaking of active, they don't seem to find a way to keep moving to new, higher forms of synthesis of what they've already learned. And to me, you know, it's
pulling it all together.
the higher common denominator, like we learned in algebra. You know, you can't solve this like Einstein said with the same brain you invented it with. You have to grow, you know.
Right.
And now there are these wonderful brain neuroscientists that talk about neoplasticity and how the cells change constantly.
There is a lot of research into the brain. Scientists didn't used to
Yes.
think
So
that the brain
everything
was
proves
plastic.
this kind of feeling
Yeah.
that I have. And so I'm just feeling like, ooh, well, I want to go here and do this or go there and do that.
What kind of things
But
would
it
you
all
still
connects.
like to do?
I'm not distracting myself because there's an overall purpose, you know. of-
And your poetry as well, and I want to talk about that in a minute.
yeah, that's so recent.
It
I didn't
is.
want anybody to hear on this program that I was a poet, because it's hard for me to say that or think that, but I've had a couple of poems that have appeared in Connecticut regional poetry anthologies and this and that, and it's just something I started to do spontaneously. And
How long ago did you start?
just when I stopped having to sell people things, which was my work. And then I could think, and then when I thought, I could put words together, and then when I put words together, I began to enjoy it, and that's how the poetry happened. It
So when
wasn't
you
anything I
say-
set out to study poetry. I hadn't read that much poetry, but I just found it was a gift that I hadn't explored, if you want to call it as much as a gift.
And you've submitted it to contests, which is also something that's lovely. I mean, when you say you weren't really
Beginners
thinking.
contest, I got a second on one of those.
And I read, and you might not remember this, but I read online that you got a first for one of your poems for a month. It was like the first in September. There were other people as well. September 2011.
You know what, I'll
Is
have
that
to look
ringing a
that
bell?
up.
You'll have to Google yourself.
But I know I've never gotten paid for it, and I'm a member of the National Association of American Pen Women,
yes.
based on the fact that I've had 3 poems, not in a book for sale, but at least published, where you had to read it in a book.
You know, we talked in the green room. I read a couple of your poems before I came here today, and I want you to read one of the poems, the one that we've selected, because talk about things synthesizing or integrating or coming together. This poem brings together different passions of yours: environmental activism, flower essences in a sense, and poetry itself. So let's, read it.
Well,
it's not very long.
Thank you. No, mine are mostly pretty short. I don't know, it's just because I give up. But anyway.
It's your style. We'll just call it your style.
I'm working, that's a thing that can just expand forever. And I'm so grateful, that's another word, grateful, for the people that have helped me in this town, in Westport and environs, that are doing nothing but encouraging budding artists and all kinds of creativity. Because if you want to ask me what we're here for, I would say to develop your creativity and to help one another. Those are the two things.
So let's say that again: to develop your creativity
and help others do that.
And help others.
Which is what's gotten me where I am. I'm just simply on a whole heap of helpers, and that's where I am.
I love it. So read this.
So this is called Grounding Food. Our daily bread with honest toil springs forth from nature's balanced soil, with water cleansed in sky's domain, and seeds which come around again. Food is nature's last best chance, so beat the drum and join the dance to clear the skies of toxic rain. Stop harvesting ill-gotten grain from GM seeds in chemical sod, with no weed fields, our Midas God, whose coinage stamped in greed we trust, must buy each day our bitter crust, and livelihoods which made in vain bring down a world we can't sustain.
The passion just rings through of that.
This is my Paula Revere section of poetry. I'm afraid it's dark. It's a little, would you say unpleasant or not?
I wouldn't say that's unpleasant.
Okay.
I would say it's provocative.
Or that's a better word for me, because I'm thinking, are people going to want to hear this?
We didn't talk about talking about this, so I might be springing this on you, but what about diet? I mean, you're talking here about, you didn't talk about Dow Chemical, but you talked about GM. How do you feel about diet?
That wasn't a company, GM, by the way. I should, genetically modified.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Oh, no, I wouldn't point a finger.
Actually, GM is General Motors. I wouldn't think that would...
okay, well,
yes.
I don't know if that's clear, but no, the idea is to get back to the natural flow of nature, which is not profit-producing if it's done cyclically and sustainably, and that's why I'm part of this Green Village movement.
The Village Green Initiative.
Green Village Initiative.
Green Village, I always get that.
And my part of that, oddly enough, was to get recycling going in Canal Park when nobody wanted to do it.
You must know Liz Milby.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I love Liz.
I love her.
I love her too.
Yeah.
She's a former classmate of mine, and she was one of the people, and I actually read this online about you. You wrote a letter, maybe it was to the Westport News or the Minuteman about this.
Oh, yes, I was writing some letters.
About paper bags and plastic bags.
Yes. So anyway, all of that comes into it, but the main thrust of Green Village Initiative is building community gardens, so diet means no junk food, nothing that has a list of ingredients you don't recognize. Oh, yeah. That's the medical in me, too. I mean, the medical genes.
Right, and not just genes,
because
but the medical
food is
background.
your medicine. Yeah,
right.
Food is medicine. And herbs are even more special need medicines, too. So I'm interested in herbs, homeopathy. But flower essences are the most gentle, and they
very benign.
They don't do anything to you. They're interactive with you if your emotional imbalance has a frequency, and the virtue of that plant, which is what Dr. Bach came to understand, has the same frequency, well, it neutralizes the negative, and you flip the seesaw. So, for instance, if you're patient, a perfect example is impatience. So the thing comes in as impatient, but if you take the flower essence, which is so strong for patience, you entrain to the new frequency.
When I get, what's the right word, a little anxious or there's a lot on my plate, I go out into my garden and I rub my lavender and I rub my lemon balm and I smell
aromatherapy.
Then, and just the smell calms me down. So I can understand that. And Dr. Bach, by the way, Anybody that goes into Whole Foods or, a health food store and sees these flower essences, a lot of them say Bach, they're Bach, B-A-C-H, Bach flower essences. And were you a representative for them at one point?
No, but I'm listed as a practitioner with the Flower Essence Society in California, and there was some branching off of distributorships. And
Did
I
you have
stayed
to
with
take
the people.
classes or something?
Oh, yes, I took a certification course for 6 months in New York back in '85 when I said, how can you learn how to pick them properly? And he said, oh, they're running a course in New York.
And so you took it because you're a learner.
Well, I just was attracted to that.
Yes. So we've talked about keeping moving, keeping connected, keeping working. There's a lot about your work that we haven't talked about that we just don't necessarily have time to talk about. You talked about sales, and I didn't understand.
Oh, well, that's the thing I was finally able to stop doing.
Was that something that you did?
Had to do, yeah.
Had to do to make a
I was on
living?
my own since 1965 with 4 children under 11 and a 5-week-old baby.
Wow.
And no real support. So I had to sort of jump into the, the fray of the normal,
Yes.
of the
and
man
how long
world,
did you
really.
do this? How long?
Years and years and years, and that's
So sales.
That's why I'm so glad I survived all that, and now I can be elderly and not doing that.
I love it.
That may
Another
be a little
advantage.
counter message here, but anyway.
Another advantage to aging. My mother says, I
when you
always
can
talk about
retire,
my mother
it's
on
really-
this show, yes, you can retire or not.
Or go to something that you really wished you'd been able to do all along.
And when Joan,
I didn't know it.
when Joan talked about working, she was very clear that it's not necessarily that you keep doing something for pay. It's great to get paid, but it's not necessarily that. It's doing something that gives
actually.
meaning.
Yeah, I don't work as a counselor. I mean, I do mostly just as Dr. Bach did. He didn't really charge, and I actually I'm more of a teacher. People used to say, "Are you a teacher?" because they got that vibe from me. So I really try to teach people how to learn more about holistic health and health for themselves, and which remedies to pick and so forth. So it's like you all. It's volunteer work, actually.
So talking about this is a great segue to talk about what you've learned from all of this. We've already touched on this a little bit, but in terms of being a teacher, let's say a young person came up to you and said, what lessons have you learned in your life that would be valuable to me as a 19, 20, 25-year-old? What would you say to that person?
Well, I think the main thing is a little off message for what conventional wisdom is. So I would ask them to not be sandbagging their comfort zones in what's told to them about what's true. In other words, I have a poem about right, wrong, true, and false. So I would just
So to
encourage investigation.
questioning and investigation.
And I'm not saying be in the face of authority or anything like that. And I'm very much for a peaceful revolution of everything and not using force for anything.
We were also talking about happiness at one point back in the green room, or maybe it was something that I emailed
In our
you.
emails, yeah.
Just, we don't have much time left. We really only have 1 minute left. In a nutshell, what do you think happiness is from the wisdom of your age today?
I think it's tuning in to all invisible and visible layers of what you are yourself, and then in doing that, the deeper you go, the more connected you feel, and the more anything you do has meaning beyond your own individual self-interest.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So with that, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you. And remember, all of you that are watching, when it comes to aging, attitude, we can look at Sophie, attitude really counts. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.